Hi, I'm Brian Jones of No Look Scuba of Sky Magazine, and we're here at the 2011 Club Championships, and this is another edition of Hard Cap of the Open Division, Day 3, quarterfinals and semis. I'm here with Tyler Kinley of Seattle Sockeye, Ian Toner of Inside Breaks, Zach Smith, also of No Look Scuba. So guys, we had some anticipated quarterfinals matchups. Everything went and held seed, but let's talk about our individual games. So Tyler, I understand you were watching Double Wide Goat. What did you see in that game?
In the double wide goat game, it was predominantly, it started off a very, very soggy game, kind of sloppy. Goat had a hard time early on maintaining possession, a lot because of that wet disc. Double wide looked good. Both teams were running a vert stack. Double wides looked very clean. It was very tight. It provided a lot of space on both the break and the open side. They were utilizing that well. Goat, on the other hand, was a little bit less crisp. We expected a lot out of John Hassel, but really the players who stepped up for Goat were Jeff Lindquist and Anatoly Vasilyev and Adrian Yearwood. These guys provided a lot of firepower for them. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough to topple a double-wide team that really looked composed. We saw Brody Smith take over. He had 5 goals and 4 assists. We saw him and Kurt Gibson work very well together. Kurt Gibson had 4 assists and 1 goal, I believe. These two combined for more stats than their entire team put together. The rest of their team, the stats were spread out, but nobody scored more than 2 goals and nobody else threw more than 1 assist. It was really the Kurt and Brody show, so you got to tip your hats to those guys.
Understand that Double Wide would advance to semifinals to play the winner of the Revolver Southpaw game. Revolver went into the game facing a team that had gone through the pre-quarters, made it out alive. Southpaw was looking to shock the world before the game, but unfortunately for them, Revolver was just too strong, took an 8-3 halftime lead, and kept rolling after that to win 15-7. Now on the other side of the bracket, we saw Ian Toner and Zach Smith. You guys were watching the Ring and Chain game, the most highly anticipated matchup. Did it live up to the hype?
I think it definitely lived up to the hype at the very least in the first half. Like Tyler was saying, the wet, soggy conditions were definitely having an impact on the game. We saw a dropped pull. We saw a few dropped scores. Strategically, we saw Ring's offense having a little more difficulty in the first half than Chain's offense. They took a few shots downfield, and the wetness got a little better, the better part of some of those hucks, making them blade a little earlier than the Ring handlers might have liked. Chain eventually went into half up 2 breaks, 8-6, got the cheaters break out of half, and just turned on the defensive intensity in the second half. Right, Zach?
Well, absolutely. One thing that I noticed, they were heavily forcing Brad Matsuka upfield, kept him away from the disc. Ring's offense had a very hard time working without him in the backfield getting every other touch. One person on Ring of Fire that really stood out was the fact that Ken Porter, after not playing a bunch of rounds, was playing in that game, and he made not only one fantastic D, but he made a couple of incredible grabs. One in particular, he brought his right arm over his shoulder, over shoulder height, which we didn't think he was going to be able to do with his shoulder. I think he tore a ligament in his shoulder. So that was incredible to see. He played incredibly well. I don't think he made a single mistake. And I think Chain was really clicking when they were supposed to be clicking. I think at the end of when things really mattered, Chain was putting everything together, and they were putting all those bad losses like the double wide loss behind them. And they were really approaching today with everything that they could. And that's why I think Chain was able to beat Ring.
Tyler, you've played Elite Open a lot, so what is it like to play with an injury and try to play in an important game like that, and what's your mindset going into it?
It's tough. However, sometimes playing through an injury takes the pressure off of you. You're expected to do less. Sometimes it allows you to just go out and play and sort of pull back on any tough decisions and play your role. Do the things that you can do every single time and not try to take the tougher shots that you might try to take. I have to make the hero play. I have to make the hero throw. With an injury, you might say, I can only do so much. I need to do those things I do well, and it can sometimes create a better performance.
So Ian, we saw Chain come out a little bit flat in power pools. They started to gain a little bit momentum. How did they come out and start to, what things were they doing better in this game that they hadn't been doing before?
Well, in this game, their Hucks were absolutely on. Greg Swanson, Dylan Tennell, they gained Robert Runner today, and he and Julian Dahl have an incredible connection. They connected at least once or twice in that quarterfinal matchup against Chain. So that offensive connection and that offensive chemistry was there. We also saw a number of great defensive matchups that I think Chain was simply winning them by working harder downfield. There's really no other way to put it. Peter Dempsey had a few layout blocks that we frankly didn't see coming, and he made the crowd completely astounded. So connecting on the deep ball and turning up the defensive intensity really made the entire team morale rise and put them on the right track heading for the rest of the day.
So in our last quarterfinal matchup, we saw Ironside battling Madison Club, and it was a battle of Wisconsin alumni and some even current Wisconsin players. The game started off pretty chippy, but Ironside was able to pull away out after half, maintaining a 12-8 lead and closing out to win that game, going away 15-9. So we saw a highly anticipated matchup with Chain Lightning facing Ironside in the semifinal. We had Ian Toner and Zach Smith doing play-by-play. So Ian, what did you think of that game?
I have to say, as you pointed out earlier, that was easily the game of the tournament. At 12-7 Ironside in the second half, I really thought Ironside had it locked up. Zach, however, believed Chain had a little fight left in them, and we saw Chain play with their hearts on their sleeves for the rest of the game. They really upped the defensive intensity. There weren't too many strategic adjustments that they made. We saw a little help from an Ironside dropped score, but as soon as Chain got those turns, the story was the deep ball. Julian Dahl, Dylan Tennell, Greg Swanson, all playing deep points at some point and completing perfect throws or even contested throws. We saw Joel Wooten come down with a spectacular grab right here in this end zone past laying out George Stubbs. Zach, that game was just incredible. What do you think about it?
I'd be surprised if the finals was more exciting than that game. I really would be. As Ian said, they were up. Ironside was up 12-7, and Chain made a really kind of ballsy call. They threw their offensive line had gotten broken a couple times in a row, and they all of a sudden put out a defensive line, a very, very strong defensive line, but they put out their D-line, and their D-line was able to hold on offense. And as you pointed out earlier in the season, Ironside's true strength is not just their offensive consistency, but they have some of the best defense in the entire country. They got Ironside's D-line off the field, and then Chain's D-line just broke a number of times in a row. And it was just like you said, it was Julian hucking it deep, Joel Wooten making that great grab, Greg Swanson putting it deep, and unfortunately for Ironside, Peter Pryle had a drop that led to another score. Chain brought it all the way back to 14s, and it was actually really interesting. Chain was going upwind after a turnover on each side. Greg Swanson picks up the disc, throws an upwind huck. It kind of is floaty. Nick Lance makes an incredible grab, and then throws it to Sammy CK. We think that Chain has held to make it 15-14, and actually comes back due to Brandon Malachek calling a travel, which is upheld by the observer. And you got to and Chain gets broken because Ironside's going downwind. And you got to think, if things didn't work out that way, Chain holds going upwind on offense. Maybe this game ends 16-14 Ironside. So you don't know, but it's obviously not really incredibly important to talk about. But this game was so close to ending in a different way.
I have to say there was one strategic adjustment that we noticed in the second half in terms of Chain's defense. They wanted to give Ironside's star cutters who maybe aren't quite as comfortable with the disc, they wanted to let them get the disc and then trap them on the sideline. We saw Danny Clark, Peter Pryle, both trapped on the sideline with big marks from the likes of Julian Dahl and Robert Runner. And when the stall count got high, they were forced to make tough low inside throws or tough high around throws. And Chain was able to eat those up or just force turfed throws. And that led to a number of breaks and was a very big difference maker in the second half.
So it seems that Ironside was reeling after a 7-1 run by Chain. What did Ironside do to calm themselves down, or what did you see out there that saw Ironside hold it together to be able to pull out this game? Because they're notoriously known for blowing leads sometimes late in games.
So it's actually it's interesting how Chain stopped Ironside's run by putting out their D-line. Ironside actually did the exact same thing. They put out their defensive line on offense, and they were able to get a hold. And that hold was key in the sense that they held while going upwind. So Shane had to hold while going upwind, and because they didn't do that, we knew that if teams traded points, 16-16 double game point, Ironside was going to be on offense going downwind. And that offensive line is very strong in the fact that you're going downwind. If you don't have something going, at least you could throw it all the way to the other end of the field and make them work upwind. So those few last points where Ironside was able to hold at the right time and Shane got broken while going upwind, those were so key in the outcome of the game. And like I said before, had one thing gone, it was so close to going another way.
Game of inches.
That final point with Ironside's star O-line was the most consistent we'd seen them play and the most confident we'd seen them play since the middle of the first half. They got every in-cut they wanted on the force side, and on the last throw, Peter Pryl beat his man to the cone. It was just textbook offense up the force side. They really just found a way to calm themselves and pull it together at the end of the game. I'm sure Josh McCarthy had many a heart attack. He said he did, but hey, they won when it counted.
Looking at the other semi now, we had double wide facing Revolver. It was me and Tyler when we got to watch that game, and early on it was a muddled mess of turnovers.
The first point alone lasted at least 12 to 15 minutes. It was shocking to see so many turnovers in such strange fashion from both teams. There were drops, there were turfs, there were just everything you could think of. It was windy. The interesting thing was before the game, I noted if there's wind, I think it's an equalizer that favors double wide. That point and from then on, it proved I was flat wrong. Double wide did not adjust well for the wind. They seemed to rely completely on their deep game, and if it wasn't their deep game, it was just a Brody and Kurt show. Other than that, we saw the first half. Kurt hucked 5 to 7, maybe more, just huge flicks that all upwind, almost none completed, and if they were completed, it was barely. This would not be a strategy that would win them the game, and it proved to be the difference, I think. On the flip side, after that first frantic point, Revolver came together and started to really look like the team that they have proven and shown to be all year. They were composed. They had guys downfield making plays across the board. It wasn't one guy. It wasn't a one-man show. Everyone was making plays. One standout was Cassidy Rasmussen, really making Max Cook pay. It was an interesting matchup. Equal height guys. Max is a great defender, and I think that speaks to Cassidy and his ability to cut open and get open on one of the better defenders of guys that size in the game. Brian, you were with me. What else did you take from the game?
I think you said it well. The team strategy that Revolver likes to incorporate is huge. When you have cutters like Cassidy Rasmussen being able to get open deep despite facing top defenders, Cassidy's not considered one of Revolver's top guys. And Revolver had a total team effort where double wide tried to go with the Brody and Kurt show. And looking at that, Kurt Gibson kind of made the difference for double wide sometimes, but Brody Smith really didn't have his best game. We saw Brody make a couple mistakes, especially late in the second half, after the game had settled down after that early muddled mess of turnovers and wind. What do you think Brody's thinking in that situation?
Coming out of this semifinal round, having watched the end of the Chain game and having watched the full double wide Revolver game, I come away feeling good for Chain, even in this loss. I think that's a loss they can really feel proud of. They played great. They made a run. Everybody was contributing. They fought, and a 17-16 game is just so tight. It comes down to just minuscule things. They can go out tonight, drink together, have fun, and be proud of themselves because they played, I think, the way that they knew they could. I think had they had another double wide 15-6 loss, this would be a tough day, and it'd be a tough season to end on that note. In that vein, I don't think double wide is going to come away from that loss feeling good at all. I think they're going to be frustrated, and if you look across the board, I think Brody's going to be frustrated with himself. I think he knows he could have brought more. Kurt really laid it all on the line. He got 2 to 3 hand blocks plus an incredible foot block. He made incredible catches across the board, but I'm sure he's still mad at himself. I'm sure he expects perfection, and that's why he's so good. So he's going to be frustrated. and there's a whole line of guys that really barely saw the field and barely saw the disc. That, I mean, at the end of the day, they're going to wish they had been a little bit more say in that game. So I don't think Double Wide is going to come away pleased. I think they need to look back on the whole season and know that they put in the work and they were a great team. But that's going to be a frustrating one. It's tough to swallow that one. Revolver is going to come away from that feeling good.
They got a championship game to play in, so of course.
They do. And one of the things that was good to see, they showed real emotion, elation when they scored, passion, throwing the disc, celebrating with each other. And that's something that a lot of times you haven't seen from them this season. It was great to see, right? It makes you love them a little bit more.
It wasn't the standard law firm of Cahill, Watson, and Kittredge. It wasn't the company line. It was Martin Cochran spiking the disc, one of their captains getting emotional, storming the field, cheering. It was a different Revolver than we had seen of late.
Yeah, and when they're having fun, it's fun to watch them. And I'm excited to see them play tomorrow. I'm excited to see Ironside play tomorrow. I think it's two teams that really earned a finals championship game. And, I think it's going to be a great show.
So Ian and Zach, you both got to watch the end of that Double Wide Revolver game. What did you see Double Wide being a little bit listless and thinking they might have to rethink their strategy going forward? What did you see at the end of that game?
I mean, seeing the end of that game and hearing your guys' comments, it just sounds like Double Wide did the same thing that they did in the semifinal last year against Revolver, where they didn't distribute the disc as widely as they could have, or as widely as they did earlier in the tournament against a team like Chain. It's hard to believe. I guess it's not surprising that they went back to their old standbys, but at the same time, if that's going to fail you under pressure, there has to be some kind of reckoning point where you realize that you need to make some kind of an adjustment, and it just didn't happen for Double A.
So moving on now, we have a rematch of the 2010 finals. So anybody here going to pick Ironside? It seems like Revolver's proven that they can handle the load. Anybody here going to make a case?
It's never out of the question. Ironside's a great team. I said this before, I say it again. Revolver has proven to make mistakes. Sockeye took him to 14-12, and it was partly because we played good D, but it was partly because they made uncharacteristic errors. They're capable of doing that. For the same matter, Ironside is capable of playing really great pressure D. I think you could see the same situation. You could even say Ironside's O is more consistent than Sockeyes, so maybe they close a game like that out. It's not impossible. Personally, I would love to see a close game like that. The last thing I want to see is a 15-10 game. Unfortunately, I think if you were to make odds, you'd probably give 3 points to Revolver.
I definitely agree. Any of you going to pick Ironside?
I will. I think Ironside has the best defense in the country, and I think they've, out of every team that's here, I think Ironside clearly has the best defense. Revolver has a very professionalism type of attitude. It's just like, they get fired up sometimes, they play like really hot, but it's all about their mantra. They take every game, they're always like, they're not really paying attention to, it's not that they're not paying attention to who they're playing, but it's just like, it doesn't matter who we play, we're going to approach it the same way, we're going to beat every team that we play. Ironside has to have a sour feeling after last season. They had a fantastic year after Worlds, and everyone was picking everyone. I think actually it was a little more even last year than it would be this year, and I think Ironside has to know exactly what Revolver's going to throw at them. Maybe they learned a thing or two from a few articles that were written about the Ironside, about the Revolver Sockeye game. I think as long as as long as Ironside's O can play well, I think as long as Matt Rebels can keep doing his job, and those guys, distribute the disc like they usually do, I think it's not only possible, I think it will happen.
It's possible. I understand I haven't given enough love to Ironside this tournament. Hats off to breaking through that incredible game against Chain. Don't think it's going to happen. It's going to be Revolver.
I also have Revolver, but if Matt Rebholz can play in pressure situations, I think that will give Ironside a chance. I think it's going to come down to their offensive handlers. But this has been Brian Jones of Sky Magazine, another edition of Hardcap. Thanks to Tyler Kinley, Ian Toner, Zach Smith. We're Sky Magazine at the 2011 Club Championships. Thanks for joining us.